I'm Arya, 32 female. I live in a small but comfortable apartment in the city, and I work as a financial analyst, which means my life revolves around numbers, patterns, and logical outcomes. My world is one of spreadsheets and forecasts, a place where everything is meant to add up. But a few months ago, my own family taught me a lesson that no balance sheet could ever prepare me for: the true cost of trust. They orchestrated a breathtakingly cruel betrayal, leaving me with a five-figure debt and a silence that was more deafening than any argument. The suffocating panic was absolute, until I realized the same skills I used at my job could be used to calculate the exact price of their deception and deliver an invoice they would never forget. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. It all started with an email from my older sister, Isabel. The subject line was written in her typical effusive style: "The ultimate family reunion? You won't believe this." Isabel was a lifestyle blogger, and her entire life was curated to look like a perfect, sun-drenched fantasy. Her emails, like her social media posts, were always filled with exclamation points and an almost aggressive level of cheerfulness. I'd learned long ago that this relentless positivity often masked a steely, self-serving agenda, but this time, I let my guard down. This time, it was about family. The email proposed a grand family reunion, the first in over a decade. Since our dad passed away 5 years ago, our family had drifted. We'd see each other for holidays, of course, but the gatherings were often tense and obligatory. My mother, Eleanor, a retired nurse with a heart of gold and a spine of jelly, always tried to smooth things over, but the friction between Isabel and me was usually palpable. She saw my stable, predictable life as boring. I saw her influencer career as vapid and narcissistic. Her husband, Leo, who ran a struggling artisanal coffee roasting business, always backed her up, his quiet sycophancy a constant source of irritation. But this reunion, Isabel argued, would be different. She had found an all-inclusive resort in Mexico, a 5-star paradise with private beaches, gourmet restaurants, and swim-up bars. "It's the perfect place for us to reconnect, to heal, and to make new memories in Dad's honor," she wrote. She attached a glossy digital brochure filled with images of turquoise water and smiling, beautiful people. It was an appealing fantasy, and a part of me, the part that missed the easy closeness our family once had, desperately wanted to believe in it. The plan was for the entire extended family to go: my mom, Isabel, Leo, their 2 kids, and a handful of aunts, uncles, and cousins. The total cost was significant, but Isabel had a solution. She explained that the resort offered a massive discount for a group booking if it was all paid on a single card up front. She framed it as a logistical necessity. "It's just too complicated with everyone paying separately," she explained during a family video call a few days later. The booking agent said it has to be one transaction to lock in the 30% group rate. Then came the hook. "Arya," she said, her voice dripping with manufactured sweetness, "you're so good with finances. You have that premium travel card with the high limit, right? The one with all the points?" I did. It was a card I used for work expenses and paid off meticulously every month. I had a credit limit that I'd earned through years of fiscal responsibility. "If you could just put the initial deposit on your card," she continued, "everyone can transfer you their share immediately. It would be so much easier, and you'd get all the rewards points. It's a win-win." Leo chimed in, nodding earnestly. "Yeah, Arya, it would be a huge help. We'll all send you the money this week, I promise." My mother smiled hopefully, her eyes pleading with me to agree. She wanted this reunion so badly, and I could see she believed it was the magic wand that would fix our fractured family. Against my better judgment, I felt a familiar pressure to be the responsible, accommodating one, the role I'd been playing my whole life. My analytical brain screamed at me to get everything in writing, to demand the money up front, but the hopeful, emotional side of me won out. "Okay," I heard myself say, "I can do that." The total package for 12 people came to just over $20,000. The deposit was 50%, a staggering $10,000. Isabel emailed me the booking link, and I took a deep breath, filled out the payment form, and clicked confirm. A wave of anxiety washed over me as I saw the transaction confirmation, but it was quickly followed by Isabel's joyous text. "You're the best, little sis. This is going to be epic. I'm sending out an email to everyone right in. Ow with your bank details. The money will be flowing in no time." I saved the confirmation emails and booking references in a secure folder, a force of habit from my job. I documented everything. At the time, I thought I was just being organized. I had no idea I was actually gathering evidence for a future battle. The first few days, I was optimistic. I pictured us all on that beach, laughing, maybe finally talking through some of the things we'd left unsaid for so long. It was a beautiful, expensive dream, and I had just paid for the ticket. The promise of paradise felt real, tangible, and for a fleeting moment, I believed my sister's manufactured sunshine was genuine. I believed we were finally on our way to becoming a family again. The days following the booking were filled with a flurry of activity in the family group chat. Isabel was in her element, posting packing lists, links to excursion packages, and countdown timers. "Only 60 days until paradise," she'd write, followed by a string of sun and palm tree emojis. Everyone seemed excited. My cousins replied with enthusiastic gifs, and my aunt posted about the new swimsuit she'd bought. The energy was infectious, and my initial anxiety began to fade, replaced by a cautious optimism. I had fronted the money for our collective happiness, and it felt like a worthy investment. However, one crucial element was missing from this whirlwind of excitement: the money. A week went by, and my bank account remained stubbornly unchanged. I sent a polite reminder to the group chat. "Hey everyone, just a friendly reminder to please transfer your share for the trip when you get a chance. Let me know if you need my details again." Isabel immediately replied, "Oh, of course. Everyone's on it, Arya, don't worry." Another week passed. Still nothing. My credit card statement was due in a few weeks, and a $10,000 balance was sitting there, mocking my trust. I decided to call my mother first. "Hi, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "Have you had a chance to talk to Isabel about the money for the trip?" My mom, Alina, sounded flustered. "Oh, honey, yes. Isabel said she's organizing a collection. She thought it would be easier if everyone gave her the cash or check, and then she'd give it to you in one lump sum. To avoid confusion," she said. This was the first I'd heard of this plan. It made no sense. A simple bank transfer was the easiest method, something everyone in the family was capable of doing. Why introduce an unnecessary middleman? It felt like a deliberate complication, a way for Isabel to maintain control. "Mom, that doesn't make sense," I said, my patience starting to fray. "It's much simpler for everyone to just send it directly to me. Can you please just transfer your portion?" There was a long pause. "Well, dear," she said hesitantly, "I already gave my share to Isabel. She collected it last Sunday when we had coffee." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. So my own mother had paid, but she'd paid my sister instead of me. Isabel had the money, at least some of it, and hadn't bothered to pass it along or even mention it. My next call was to Isabel. She didn't pick up. I tried again an hour later, straight to voicemail. I sent her a text. "Isabel, we need to talk about the trip payment. Mom said you're collecting the money. When can I expect it?" Hours turned into a day, and there was no response. Meanwhile, the group chat had gone eerily quiet. The cheerful countdowns and packing tips had stopped. It was as if a switch had been flipped. I tried calling my cousin Mark, who had been one of the most enthusiastic responders in the chat. He didn't answer either. This was no longer a simple delay. It was a coordinated silence. Panic began to creep in, cold and sharp. I had been a fool, a complete and utter fool. I had allowed my desire for family harmony to override every logical instinct I possessed. As a financial analyst, I advised clients every day on managing risk and avoiding bad investments. Yet, I had just made the worst investment of my life, backed by nothing more than empty promises and a sister's dazzlingly fake smile. The trip was now only a month away. My credit card bill was due in a week. I had to pay it to avoid massive interest charges and a hit to my credit score. a score I had worked my entire adult life to build and protect. With a trembling hand, I transferred $10,000 from my savings account, money I had earmarked for a down payment on a home, to my credit card. The feeling of seeing that hard-earned money vanish to cover someone else's vacation was sickening. It felt like I had been robbed, not by a stranger in a dark alley, but by the very people who were supposed to have my back. That evening, I sat in my silent apartment, staring at the vacation brochure on my computer screen. The smiling models on the beach seemed to be laughing at me. The turquoise water looked cold and menacing. This wasn't a promise of paradise anymore. It was a carefully constructed trap, and I had walked right into it. The worst part was the gnawing uncertainty. Were they still planning to go? Had they booked another trip behind my back? Or was the whole thing an elaborate scam from the beginning, designed to fleece the one family member they knew was financially responsible? The silence from my family was the answer. My invitation to this grand reunion had clearly been lost in the mail, or, more accurately, it had never been sent at all. I was not part of the plan, I was just the bank. And now, the bank was officially closed. The due date on my credit card bill came and went. I paid the full $10,000 balance, the click of my mouse feeling like a gavel striking down on my own foolishness. The transaction cleared, and my savings account now had a gaping hole in it. The silence from my family, however, remained absolute. My calls to Isabel and Leo went straight to voicemail. My texts were left unread, single gray checkmarks on a screen that felt like a void. The bustling family group chat was a ghost town. It was clear I had been systematically cut off. I was officially ghosted. I tried a different approach. I sent a carefully worded email to the entire family, the same group that had received Isabel's initial invitation. I attached a spreadsheet, my native language, detailing the total cost, the per-person share, and a polite but firm request for payment by the end of the week. I even included a scanned copy of my credit card statement showing the charge from the resort. There could be no ambiguity, no room for misunderstanding. I hit send and felt a small, fleeting sense of control. Numbers don't lie. Spreadsheets don't have emotions. This was pure data. Surely they couldn't ignore that. They could. Not a single person replied. It was as if the email had been sent into a black hole. The trip was now less than 2 weeks away. A new, more terrifying thought began to take hold. What if they never intended for me to go at all? What if the plan all along was for me to pay, and for them to go without me? The cruelty of that idea was breathtaking. To not only steal from me, but to also exclude me, to build their vacation on the foundation of my financial ruin and my absence. My last resort was my mother. I drove to her house, my hands clenched on the steering wheel. She was the only one who hadn't completely iced me out, though her communication had become strained and evasive. When she opened the door, her face was etched with a familiar, weary sadness. She couldn't meet my eyes. "Mom, what is going on?" I asked, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and hurt. "No one is answering me. The trip is in 10 days. I paid $10,000 and I've heard nothing. Nothing." She wrung her hands, a nervous habit she'd had for as long as I could remember. "Arya, honey, it's complicated." "Complicated?" I repeated, my voice rising. "It's not complicated. It's theft. They used my credit card and disappeared. Did you know about this? Were you in on it?" No, of course not," she said, finally looking at me, her eyes welling with tears. "Isabel, she told everyone there was a change of plans. She said you had to back out for work reasons, and that you'd be getting a full refund for your spot." The lie was so audacious, so complete that I almost laughed. They weren't just stealing my money, they were rewriting the narrative, painting me as the one who was unreliable. They were erasing me from the story and replacing me with a convenient fiction. "A refund?" I said, my voice dangerously low. "Mom, there is no refund. That was a non-refundable group deposit. I'm out the entire $10,000. Did she tell you that?" Elinor shook her head, a tear tracing a path down her wrinkled cheek. She said you were handling it, that it was all sorted out with the resort." "And the money everyone gave her," I pressed. "Where is that?" My mother's face crumpled. "I don't know, Arya. Leo's business has been struggling. They just bought a new car. Isabel said it was a sponsorship deal, but..." She trailed off, unable to voice the terrible conclusion that was hanging in the air between us. They had used the money. The money my mother and likely others had given them in good faith was gone, spent on their own lifestyle while my savings were drained to fund their vacation. I left my mother's house feeling colder and more alone than I had ever felt in my life. The betrayal wasn't just financial anymore. It was a deep, personal severing. My own sister had orchestrated a conspiracy against me, and the rest of my family had either participated or stood by and allowed it to happen. The suffocating panic I had felt before was now morphing into something else, something harder and sharper. It was the icy calm of realization. There would be no heartfelt apologies. There would be no wire transfers with memos that said, "So sorry for the delay." There was only the $10,000 of silence. As I drove home, the analyst in my brain, the part of me that had been drowned out by hurt and confusion, began to wake up. It started running calculations, assessing damages, and formulating a new kind of forecast. My family had made a terrible miscalculation. They had assumed I would just absorb the loss, that I would be the good, quiet daughter and sister and just let it go. They had mistaken my kindness for weakness. And now, I was going to teach them a very expensive lesson about the difference. The day after my confrontation with my mother, I called my best friend Ben. He worked in IT security for a large tech firm, and his entire job was about finding digital breadcrumbs and seeing the patterns people thought were invisible. I met him at a coffee shop, my laptop bag feeling heavier than usual. I laid out the whole sordid story, from Isabel's initial email to the $10,000 of silence. He listened patiently, his expression growing more grim with each detail. "So, they used you as a bank and then ghosted you," he summarized, shaking his head. "And your sister, the lifestyle blogger, is the ringleader. Arya, that's not just cruel, it's monumentally stupid. They left a digital trail a mile wide." That was the first spark of hope I'd felt in weeks. While I was an expert at financial trails, Ben was the master of digital ones. "That's what I was hoping you'd say," I replied, opening my laptop. I saved everything. The initial email, the booking confirmations, the resort's terms and conditions, my credit card statement. It's all here. Ben leaned over and we spent the next hour poring over the documents. My methodical, almost obsessive record-keeping was finally paying off. "Okay, first things first," Ben said, his fingers flying across his keyboard as he navigated to the resort's website. "Let's look at the fine print of this group booking." I had read it before, but my eyes had been clouded by panic. Ben, however, was looking at it with cold, professional detachment. "Here it is," he said, pointing to a clause deep in the terms of service. "The group booking is managed by a single designated group leader. All communications, modifications, and cancellations must be initiated by the group leader whose name is associated with the original reservation." "Isabel's name isn't on the reservation," I said. "I made the booking, I'm the group leader." Ben grinned. "Exactly. They needed your credit card, but in doing so, they gave you all the power. They literally can't change a single thing about this reservation without you." A wave of relief, so potent it almost made me dizzy, washed over me. I wasn't powerless. I was in control. "What else can we find?" I asked, my voice filled with a newfound energy. Ben's next stop was social media. Isabel's entire life was an open book, curated for public consumption. We scrolled through her recent posts. There she was, posing with a new luxury SUV. The caption read, "So blessed to be partnering with at Luxury Motors for our upcoming family adventure. Sponsored family travel making memories." "A sponsorship?" I scoffed. "Leo's coffee business can barely afford its rent. There's no way they got a car sponsorship." Ben did a quick search. The dealership she tagged was a local, high-end dealer. He navigated to their website and then to their social media pages. "Interesting," he muttered. "They have a program where you can get a discount for social media promotion, but it's not a full sponsorship. They definitely paid a significant amount for that car." And I had a very good idea where that money had come from. The cash contributions from my mother and likely others had been funneled directly into their lifestyle upgrades. The next piece of the puzzle came from Leo's business page. He had recently posted about acquiring a new, top-of-the-line espresso machine. "Investing in quality for our amazing customers," the caption read. The machine was a beautiful, chrome beast that cost, as a quick search revealed, at least $5,000. More of the reunion money, undoubtedly. They weren't just planning a vacation, they were funding a complete life overhaul on my dime and the family's contributions. Ben's final act of genius was the most crucial. "The booking was made through your email address, right?" he asked. "You're the primary contact." "Yes," I confirmed. "Which means," he said, a slow smile spreading across his face, "that you have access to the online booking portal. You can see the entire itinerary. The room assignments, the flight details they probably uploaded, everything." My heart hammered in my chest. I logged into the resort's portal using the reservation number from my confirmation email. And there it was. The entire plan laid out in digital clarity. 12 names, room assignments. They had given themselves, Isabel and Leo, the master suite with the oceanfront view and private jacuzzi. My mother was in a small room at the back of the resort, next to the service entrance. And my name? It was nowhere to be found on any rooming list. They had booked for 12 people, but only assigned rooms for 11. My spot, the one I had paid for, was left vacant. This was the final, irrefutable proof. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated, deliberate plan to use my money and exclude me. They were going to let my spot on the reservation go to waste, assuming I'd never find out. They would have gone on their luxurious vacation, stayed in their fancy suite, and told everyone I had canceled due to work. The lie was perfect, seamless. But they had forgotten one thing. They had forgotten who they were dealing with. I wasn't just the family pushover. I was a financial analyst. And now, thanks to Ben, I was an investigator with a mountain of evidence. I had their plan, I had their lies, and most importantly, I had the login credentials. The power was entirely in my hands. As I logged out of the portal, a cold, clear sense of purpose settled over me. The time for hurt and panic was over. It was time to start planning. Armed with the login credentials and a mountain of digital evidence, I shifted from victim to strategist. The grief was still there, a cold stone in my chest, but it was now overlaid with the clean, sharp focus of a professional project. The project, Operation Payback. The goal, not just to recoup my $10,000, but to make my sister and her accomplices understand the true cost of their actions. This wasn't just about money, it was about accountability. My first step was to leverage my position as the official group leader on the reservation. I spent an entire evening on the phone with the resort's group booking coordinator, a wonderfully helpful woman named Maria. I adopted my most professional, cheerful voice. "Hi, Maria," I began. "Aria here, the group leader for reservation #743B. We are so excited about our upcoming trip. I just have a few adjustments to make to our booking, if that's all right." "Of course, Ms. Aria," she replied warmly. "How can I help?" This was the moment of truth. "Well," I said, "it seems we have a bit of a change in our party. My sister, Isabel, and her husband, Leo, have had something come up. They've decided to upgrade their experience significantly. They want the presidential villa." The presidential villa was the resort's most opulent accommodation. It was a secluded, multi-room compound with a private pool, a personal butler, and its own dedicated chef. It was also phenomenally expensive, costing an additional $8,000 for the week. Maria paused for a moment. "That is quite an upgrade, ma'am. I can certainly check availability. The additional cost would be substantial." "Oh, we're aware," I said breezily. "It's a special celebration for them. Please put the charge on the card on file." I could almost hear Maria's smile through the phone. She had no reason to question it. I was the group leader, using the authorized card. Within minutes, she confirmed the change. Isabel and Leo were now booked into a villa fit for royalty, and my credit card had a new pending charge for $8,000. This was step 1 of the plan, inflating the bill. Step 2 was about reallocating the resources. "Now, about the other rooms," I continued. "With Isabel and Leo moving to the villa, their original oceanfront suite is now available. I'd like to move my mother, Alina, into that room. She deserves a treat." Maria happily obliged. I then took the small, undesirable room originally assigned to my mother and canceled it, receiving a small resort credit in return. I systematically went down the list of family members. My aunt and uncle, who I knew were complicit. Their garden view room was downgraded to the room with a view of the parking lot. My younger cousins, who were probably just going along with it, I left their rooms as they were. It was a small, petty move, but it gave me immense satisfaction. The final and most crucial part of the phone call came next. "Maria, you've been so helpful," I said. "One last thing. For the welcome package, could you make a small change? Instead of the standard fruit basket in each room, I'd like to arrange for a personalized note and a bill to be delivered." "A bill, ma'am?" she asked, her confusion evident. "Yes," I said calmly. "A detailed invoice. I'll email you the exact text I want printed on your resort letterhead." It's a bit of an inside joke with my family. She was hesitant, but I was persuasive. I explained it was part of a surprise for my sister, a running gag about how she was the queen of the family. Reluctantly, she agreed. The trap was now set. The next day, I executed step 3, securing my financial position. I called my credit card company. I explained that I had made a large travel booking that was now subject to some changes and that I was concerned about potential fraud. While I didn't report the charges as fraudulent yet, that was my ace in the hole, I did put a travel alert on my account and asked them to monitor it closely. I wanted a clear record of my proactive communication with the bank. Then I began to draft the invoices. For Isabel and Leo, I created a beautifully formatted document that looked official and unforgiving. It listed the original $10,000 deposit. It then added the $8,000 villa upgrade. I also added a line item for management and administration fees. A cheeky nod to my own profession for another $2,000. Total due, $20,000. For every other family member, the invoice was simpler. It listed their per-person share of the original deposit with a note at the bottom. "This portion of your trip has been paid for by Arya. Your host for this vacation is your conscience. Please enjoy your stay." The plan was surgical. When they arrived in paradise, expecting a week of free luxury, they would be met with a reality of my design. Isabel and Leo would be escorted to a villa that carried a price tag far beyond their means, a bill they had no choice but to confront. The rest of the family would be handed a letter that would strip away their plausible deniability and force them to acknowledge who had actually funded their getaway. They had wanted a vacation free of charge. I was going to give them one, but it would come with a cost they hadn't anticipated: guilt, shame, and public exposure. As I emailed the final invoice text to Maria at the resort, I felt a sense of calm I hadn't experienced in weeks. I had recalculated the debt, and the final numbers were about to be delivered. The day my family was scheduled to fly to Mexico was one of the strangest days of my life. I woke up feeling a bizarre mix of anxiety and exhilaration. I had set all the pieces in motion, and now all I could do was wait for the dominoes to fall. I imagined them at the airport, excited and oblivious, checking their bags and looking forward to the sun and sand they believed they were entitled to. I pictured Isabel, no doubt documenting every moment for her social media followers, crafting the perfect narrative of a blissful family escape. Around 3 p.m., the time they would have landed, cleared customs, and begun the transfer to the resort, I logged onto my email and opened the resort's booking portal. Everything was still in place. The presidential villa was assigned to Isabel and Leo. My mother was in the oceanfront suite. The others were scattered in their respective, carefully chosen rooms. The calm before the storm. My phone rang at 4:17 p.m. It was a number I didn't recognize, with a Mexican country code. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, it rang again, and again. On the fourth try, I answered, putting the phone on speaker and hitting the record button on my computer's audio software. "Hello," I said, my voice neutral. Arya, what in the world is going on?" It was Isabel, her voice a shrill shriek of panic and fury. The manufactured calm of her influencer persona had been completely stripped away, revealing the raw entitlement beneath. "What have you done?" "I'm not sure what you mean, Isabel," I replied calmly. "I assume you've arrived safely. How is the resort?" "Don't play dumb with me," she screamed. In the background, I could hear Leo's frantic voice talking to someone else, and the faint sound of my young nephew crying. They brought us to this mansion, this villa, and they handed us a bill for $20,000, and everyone else got a letter saying you paid for them. What is this? I'm glad everything arrived as planned, I said, my voice as steady as a rock. I thought since you and Leo were the masterminds behind this wonderful family reunion, you deserved the best accommodations. I upgraded you. You're welcome. There was a sputtering sound on the other end of the line. Upgraded us? With what money, Arya? You put another $8,000 on your card. Are you insane? My card? I asked, feigning confusion. Oh no, that charge is for you. Think of the original $10,000 as my contribution to the family. A gift. But the upgrade and the administrative fees for my time and effort in managing this whole affair, that's all on you. You need to settle that with the resort directly. We don't have $20,000. Leo yelled, apparently having grabbed the phone from her. You did this on purpose. This is sabotage. No, Leo, I corrected him. This is an invoice. You took cash from our family, lied about it, and spent it on a new car and an espresso machine. You booked a vacation on my credit card with no intention of paying me back or even inviting me. You thought you could steal from me and get away with it. You were wrong. This isn't sabotage, it's a reckoning. I could hear the resort staff speaking to them firmly in the background. They're saying we have to provide a credit card right now or there. Going to have us removed from the property, Isabel wailed, back on the phone. Arya, please, you have to fix this. Call them. Tell them it was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake, I said, and for the first time, I let the ice in my voice show. It was a choice, my choice, just as everything you've done for the past 2 months was your choice. You have 2 options. You can pay the resort for the villa you're currently standing in, or you can find your own way home. I am the group leader on this reservation, and I will not be authorizing any changes. I could hear her starting to sob. These were not the curated, single tear-for-the-camera sobs of her online persona. This was the ugly, desperate crying of someone who had been utterly outplayed. Then my mother called, her voice was trembling. Arya, what's happening? Everyone is in an uproar. Isabel and Leo are being kicked out. They're not being kicked out, Mom, I explained patiently. They're being asked to pay for a luxury upgrade they can't afford. The vacation for you and everyone else is fully paid for, by me, as the note said. But honey, this is awful, it's a mess. It is a mess, I agreed. It's a mess they made. I'm just the one cleaning it up. You have an oceanfront suite, Mom. Please try to enjoy it. You deserve a nice view. I hung up before she could argue. The final calls of the evening were from various aunts and cousins. Some were apologetic, stammering their thanks and embarrassment. Others were angry, accusing me of ruining the reunion. To each of them, I said the same thing. Isabel and Leo orchestrated this. They took your money and they used me. My only role was to ensure the bill for their actions was delivered to the correct address. Enjoy your trip. Then I blocked all their numbers. The final invoice had been delivered. I didn't know if Isabel and Leo would find a way to pay or if they were sleeping at the airport. Frankly, I didn't care. I had turned their paradise into their prison, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could finally breathe. The week my family was in Mexico was the quietest, most peaceful week of my life. My phone was silent. My email inbox was free of passive-aggressive family chatter. I used the time to reconnect with myself. I took long walks, read books, and spent an evening with Ben, raising a glass to our successful operation. He had been following the saga with rapt attention and was thrilled with the outcome. So, what's the final damage? He asked. Well, I said, pulling up my credit card app. The original $10,000 charge is what it is. I consider that the price of a very expensive lesson. The $8,000 charge for the villa upgrade, however, is another story. The charge was still listed as pending. Isabel and Leo had obviously failed to provide a valid card, and the resort hadn't been able to process the payment. They'll come after me for it, I said. The resort has my card on file. That's when you file the chargeback, Ben said. You have a recorded phone call of your sister admitting she can't pay for a service you were coerced into ordering under false pretenses. You have a mountain of evidence showing a coordinated plan to defraud you. Your bank will side with you in a heartbeat. He was right. The next day, when the charge officially posted, I called my credit card's fraud department. I spent an hour on the phone with a patient agent, laying out the entire story and emailing my folder of evidence. The initial emails, the booking confirmations, the chat logs, and the audio file of my call with Isabel. The agent was stunned. By the end of the call, he had initiated a fraud investigation and placed a temporary credit of $8,000 back on my account. My family returned a week later, not with tans and happy memories, but with the sour aura of defeat. The story, as I pieced it together from a long, apologetic voicemail from one of my cousins, was that Isabel and Leo had been unceremoniously removed from the presidential villa. Unable to pay for any other room, they spent an entire night in the resort lobby, arguing with staff and trying to call anyone who would listen. Eventually, one of our uncles took pity on them and let them sleep on the floor of his parking lot view room for the rest of the week. The grand vacation had turned into a week of public humiliation. Isabel's social media went completely dark. There were no smiling photos, no sponsored posts, no blissful family portraits. The silence was more damning than any confession. About a month later, my mother called and asked if I would come over for dinner. She said Isabel and Leo would be there. They wanted to talk. A part of me wanted to say no, to keep the silence going forever. But another part of me knew I needed to close this chapter for good. I walked into my mother's house with my head held high. Isabel and Leo were sitting on the couch, looking diminished. Isabel's face was pale and stripped. D of its usual makeup mask, Leo just stared at the floor. "Arya," Isabel began, her voice barely a whisper. "We are so sorry." It was the first time in my life I had ever heard her sound genuinely remorseful. There were no excuses, no justifications. They admitted everything. They admitted to taking the family's money, to spending it on their car and business, and to planning the whole trip on my back. "We were drowning in debt," Leo said, his voice thick with shame. We thought you wouldn't even miss the money." It was a stupid, horrible thing to think. We know that now. They presented me with a payment plan, drafted on a sheet of notebook paper. They had sold the new SUV at a loss and were selling the espresso machine. They were going to pay me back the full $10,000 in monthly installments over the next 2 years. I looked at the paper, at their desperate, humbled faces. I thought about the anger and the hurt, the panic and the betrayal. And I realized it was over. I had won. Not just by getting my money back, but by forcing them to confront the ugliest parts of themselves. "Okay," I said, my voice clear and steady. "I accept." I didn't say I forgave them. That was a bridge too far, a structure that had been completely burned down. But I accepted their apology and their plan. It was a business transaction now, nothing more. Our relationship as sisters, as family, was an account that had been permanently closed. In the months that followed, things changed. The power dynamic in my family was completely restructured. I was no longer the reliable, quiet pushover. I was the one who held the line, the one who demanded accountability. Some family members were distant, still uncomfortable with the new order. But others, including my mother, treated me with a newfound respect. The monthly payments from Isabel and Leo arrived on the first of every month without fail. I never spent the money. I put it into a new savings account, one I labeled Emergency Fund. It was a reminder that the biggest emergencies don't always come from strangers, but sometimes from the people sitting right next to you at the dinner table. My trust is more expensive now, and the balance sheet of my life is finally, perfectly, in order.